Salutare, salutare, astăzi 13 octombrie, suntem pe canalul Military Summary, da? Și ne uităm la videoclipul intitulat The Fall, toamna. The Russians started the largest offensive operation, da? Deci rușii au pornit cea mai mare operațiune ofensivă. Hai să vedem despre ce e vorba.
So no changes on the ground. Now we are moving to Avdiivka, the major and the main battle of the Russians in this.
Da, pentru cine nu știe, Avdiivka asta este un oraș sau o periferie mai degrabă a orașului Donetsk, da, care avea vreo 30.000 de locuitori și care se constituie într-o fortăreață pe care ucrainenii au folosit-o din 2014 încoace pentru a bombarda civilii din Donetsk.
Those days. As you can see, there are a significant number of icons, and the Russians too.
Da? Cu roșu sunt ruși, hei, armata roșie, și cu galben sunt forțele care apără valorile europene și democrația și whatever.
Attack Avdiivka and Ukrainian forces in this area also use significant number of armored vehicles, tanks, armored personnel carriers, armored infantry machines, mining equipment, a lot of artillery systems. We have already received lots of updates, a lot of geolocated confirmations that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to establish control over a few territories, and the most important is that as a result of offensive operation using significant number of armored vehicles, the Russians established control over the Terikon that located on the southwest of Krasnogorovka and on the north of Avdiivka. These territories currently located on the Russian control. They completed the clearing operation, and currently the Russians establish control over every single movement of the Ukrainians that take place on the northern part of Avdiivka. Basically, the Russians control everything. The only question is how the Russians are going to use this information and these benefits. We got a very interesting video from this direction, very interesting details. This video we got on the 10th of October. I believe you have already seen this video.
Foarte multe blindate vedem, da? O coloană foarte lungă de blindate.
Just on this scene, just on this small photo, we can calculate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 armored vehicles.
Deci, încă o dată, vă arăt și eu. Vine pe aici, pe aici, pe aici, pe aici. Cât vezi cu ochii numai blindate, apare întrebarea de ce rușii se mișcă atât de nestânjeniți. Unde sunt dronele inamice? Ce se întâmplă? Ce-i cu artileria inamică? A fost eliminată în totalitate de ruși? Sau rușii merg pe principiu, bă, n-aveți voi atâtea drone câte tancuri avem noi?
Because that were already in the vicinity of Krasnogorovka trying to storm Avdiivka from the north. Furthermore, there are more.
Avantajul lui Dimail fiind bielorus e faptul că poate să pronunțe denumirile localităților ucrainene fără niciun efort.
More tanks and armored vehicles were heading from the north. Significant number of forces, and the Ukrainian sources are saying that the Russians involved up to 50 armored vehicles. So probably, I think that battle, that attack, was probably the first attack with such a significant number of armored vehicles from Russian side since the Second World War, since the Kursk battle or something like this. And as a result of that attack, the Russians established control. But the most important part of this video is that Ukrainians, having Russian forces right on the edge positions, weren't using artillery. The Ukrainians didn't attack, even as we don't see on this video even a single, a single area with that the Ukrainians attack with artillery forces or cluster rounds or something like this. And the Russian sources reported that as a result of counter-artillery duels, the Russians managed to suppress completely Ukrainian artillery forces. The Ukrainians were completely suppressed, significant number of artillery systems were destroyed, and basically the Russians had possibilities to attack using just these armed vehicles without being afraid of being attacked by the Ukrainian forces. For example, on the South Donetsk direction, in the vicinity of Perlomaiska, the Russians published a lot of videos how they managed to discover the Ukrainian artillery systems. On this video, we see the howitzer, German howitzer Panzerhaubitze 2000. And as a result of artillery strike of using the Krasnopol hit, that artillery system was destroyed. The second artillery system was destroyed a little bit to the south from original area. Another artillery system was destroyed as a result of Krasnopol hit. So the Russians managed to suppress this territory without any problems. When talking about Avdiivka itself, the Russians continue bombing and attacking the city using all types of weapons they have. As a result of 500 strikes, the Russians managed to pin down and to destroy a lot of Ukrainian positions, a lot of ammo depots of 110th Brigade or 53rd Motorized Brigade, and many other types of forces that Ukrainians have in this direction. Furthermore, the Russians started bombing and attacking the water pump station on the east Avdiivka edge positions. As a result of FAB strikes, the Ukrainians had significant damage, and probably this is another artillery preparation before the next wave of attack of the Russian forces in this direction. So something like this. When to complete the story of the northern part, of course, we need to mention one important thing. That yet by the 8 p.m. of the local time on the 12th of October, we still haven't received even a single geolocated video that confirms that the Russians managed to cross the railways and establish control or to answer the north.
Îl întrerup puțin pe Dima pentru a sublinia diferența dintre abordările pe care le au cele două armate. Da? Ucrainenii anunță, vom avea o contraofensivă, spun și pe unde, da? Îi fac și publicitate, dacă e posibil așa ceva, și pe urmă când să o pună în execuție se fâse toată trebușoara. Rușii tac și fac. Nici nu știi când e apucat ofensiva. Treaba asta se desfășoară de vreo 2 zile cel puțin. Cred că de pe 9 octombrie, de fapt.
Northern part of Berdichi and the eastern part of Stepova. A lot of Russian military experts.
Da, și încă ceva, ce fac ucrainenii, mai dau și termene. Știți chestia aia, de spunea și Zelenski. În august, la vară, o să fac plaje în peninsula Crimea. Rușii n-au niciodată termenele dat, nu spun ce atacă, vedem doar că atacă. Ok, ca și Bahmut, nu au spus niciodată, îl luăm într-o lună, îl luăm în 2 luni, îl luăm în 6 luni. Aoleu, nu s-a putut, hai, peste 2 luni sigur o luăm. Ei n-au zis nimic, pur și simplu s-au apucat de treabă și au terminat-o când au terminat-o.
Experts have already reported that the Russians have already entered those cities. The only geolocated video we have is how the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to get the railways. So this area was captured by the Russians. They managed to land their infantry. They managed to dig in deeper in this area. They managed to bring also significant number of armored personnel carriers, a lot of infantry, but no video from Berdichi. But as we can see, the railways tracks located very close to the cities. So I assume that the Russians crossed the railways and attacked the cities, but we need more time to understand their entire picture. Furthermore, the Russians to pin down the Ukrainians and not to allow them to counterattack, bombed Avdiivka heavily, the northern part, the area where yesterday they managed to destroy a train with fuel, and today they continue attacking the same territory because the coal mine and the chemical plant is the main industrial area in this city and the main area with concentration of Ukrainian forces. And of course, the Russians understand that they still haven't established a strong foothold on the Ukrainian side.
Deci Andriivka pare a fi un oraș industrial ca și Bahmutul, dar este cam jumătate de Bahmut, ceva de genul.
The railways, to create a strong foothold, first of all, they need to capture at least one city. They need to do the same as the Ukrainians did in Rabotina. They capture Rabotina.
Jumătate ca și număr de locuitori și evident mă refer la locuitorii de dinainte de operațiunea militară specială sau de dinainte de ofensiva rușilor.
And at least from this perspective, we can consider a small foothold, a small area with a roof above your head where you can dig in deeper. So the Russians need to do this because the Ukrainians continue regrouping and they continue sending more and more forces in this direction. And currently the Ukrainians are trying to concentrate their forces between the cities by the name of Yevgenievka, the city by the name of Solovyova, the city by the name of Achertny and Arkhangelsk. So this is the area of the main concentration of Ukrainian forces. For this concentration, the Ukrainians, during the first day, were trying to use the city and the railway station by the name of Achertina. But the Russians controlled the situation, and as a result of missile strike, the entire railway station was destroyed. During the first day, we got the report from the Ministry of Defense that as a result of the strike, the Ukrainians lost the forces of 31st Mechanized Brigade lost up to 90 soldiers and something around 10 armored vehicles. So that's why the Ukrainians took a decision to use the railway stations that located a little bit further to the west, in the vicinity of Novogrodovka, let's say Progress and so on. But the further main logistics center you have, the more time you need to spend while regrouping your forces. Currently, the Ukrainians don't have a lot of positions to concentrate forces. For example, on the western part of Avdiivka, there is a lot of significant number of rivers, lakes, and so on, with almost destroyed bridges in this area. On the northern part, there is a railways. That's also something like a barrier that you need to cross if you want to attack. So basically, the Ukrainians will have just one position where they can concentrate forces, and this is the area we are talking about. And this is a very tiny, very small area that is under complete Russian control, fire control. And the Russians will continue bombing this territory, trying to break the Ukrainian plans of concentrating forces. So we'll see what is going to be next on the northern flank. When talking about the southern flank, during the previous day, the Russians mainly were focused to develop their positions to the west in direction of Pervomaiskaya. And we got another video how the Russian armored fist, also significant number of tanks, personal carriers and infantry were moving along the streets of Pervomaiska in direction of Nitailova. At some point, the Russian personal carrier or tank got on minefields and was destroyed, at least damaged. As the tank wasn't destroyed, and this is very interesting. During the previous days, we saw significant number of videos how the Russian tanks entered the minefields, the mines blown up, but the tank and armored vehicles survived. We saw the same story in Kupin's direction,
Și aparent,
on the north
vehiculul blindat mai mișcă.
Area. So maybe the Ukrainians are using very small mines, or maybe the Russians found a solution with something like defense equipment on the armored vehicles. Anyway, the Russians were attacking to the west, trying to develop their positions, and the main purpose of that attack was to create another attack road as far as possible from Severna. By this attack, the Russians were trying to bypass Severna and Toninka along the tree lines and to encircle this territory and basically to cut the Ukrainian supply and support that goes from the cities by the name of Yasnobrodovka, let's say, in direction of Toninka. So this is one of the main supply roads that Ukrainians currently use. The second supply road is from Umanska to Orlovka, also from to Toninka. So to cut these territories, to cut these roads, the Russians need to first move to the west and then to the north. When talking about Severna, the Russians still haven't entered the city, the villages, but the sources are saying that they managed to half encircle this territory, and currently this territory is under very heavy fire. I'll remind you that these two villages are under protection probably of 53rd Mechanized Brigade. When talking about southern part of Avdiivka, as we discussed in the previous video, as a result of unexpected and very powerful attack with the infantry, the Russians enter Avdiivka from the south, and currently the Russians are trying to dig in deeper and to prepare the foothold and the bridgehead before further offensive operation inside of Avdiivka from the south. This is another very powerful and very dangerous point of pressure, because currently the Ukrainians are being attacked from many directions, from the north, from the east, from the south, from the west, from every single direction. The Ukrainians don't know what to do, and it is very difficult
că arată ca o încercuire, aproape închis.
to move your forces from one side to another, because you are always under very heavy fire. When talking about Donetsk direction, probably as a result of clashes in this area, the Ukrainians lost up to 340 soldiers. Of course, some of the losses took place in Bakhmut direction, but the major part of the losses took place exactly in this area. The Ukrainians, to slow down and to stop the Russians, at least for a small part of their speed, attacked the Russian logistic roads and logistic areas, and as a result of one of those strikes or sabotage operation, the Ukrainians managed to destroy the bridge between Yasinovata and Gorlovka, the bridge that the Russians were using to supply and support their forces, who are currently trying to storm Avdiivka. Of course, this is a very big logistical losses for the Russians, and I have few questions about the situation. The first question is that the Russians are saying that that bridge wasn't destroyed as a result of missile strike. We saw a lot of strikes in the past, missile strikes in the past, but it's impossible to destroy the bridge using one missile. So as I understand, and according to sources on the ground, that bridge was mined by the Ukrainians and destroyed using the like explosive. So
Sabotaj.
this is a very big question for the Russian counter-intelligence forces. Why this strategical bridge wasn't under any protection, and that this bridge was destroyed just with small explosives. Very interesting situation. Of course, I believe the Russians have some solutions on that case, but anyway, this is a small logistical problem issue that the Russians need to solve in a very near future. When talking about South Donetsk direction, the Russians restarted their offensive operation in direction of Novomikhailivka. Today, the Ukrainians published another video of another attempt of attack by the Russian forces trying to storm the city from the south. The thing that you can see on the video, another significantly greatest convoy of Russian armored vehicles heading to the south, trying to attack the Ukrainian positions. Another video with maybe dozens of armored vehicles, including tanks, personal carriers, infantry machines, and so on. The Russians managed to land their infantry, and as a result of very unexpected and fast attack, the Russians captured the Ukrainian trenches and the Ukrainian shelters and the bridgehead. And basically, the Russians have already created a very powerful zone, a very powerful front line, combat line, to start another offensive operation in direction of Novomikhailivka. But this operation probably the most
Deci o ofensivă separată de cea din Andriivka și ați văzut că n-am început clipul chiar de la începutul ei, cum l-a încărcat Dima, erau alte operațiuni ofensive ale rușilor în alte zone.
For me, because I don't understand how the Russians are planning to attack Novomikhailivka from the south without attacking the same city from the north. And according to information we have, the Russians haven't managed to complete the clearing operation of stronghold by the name of Zverinets. Maybe they have, but we haven't received even a single video confirmation. And if the Russians manage to clear the stronghold by the name of Zverinets, that means that very soon, in a day or in two, we're going to get more updates and first updates about northern offensive operation in Novomikhailivka as well. During the previous clashes, the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian positions of their artillery forces that were attacking the Russians while the first waves of attacks. And during the previous 24 hours, the Russians suppressed a significant number of hidden Ukrainian artillery positions. As a result of Lancet strikes, at least 2 artillery systems were destroyed to the west of Novomikhailivka in the cities like Elizavetovka and Ilivka. So significant success as well. But the Ukrainians also published the video how they managed to discover the Russian artillery systems that were supporting the Russians during attack on Novomikhailivka, and as a result of HIMARS strike, that artillery system was destroyed. The Russians, to support their forces, were using mainly TOS flamethrower systems. But as we know, TOS systems doesn't have a very long range. 6 kilometers, it's like maximum distance they can attack. And of course, the Ukrainians managed to discover that system using drones, and they managed to discover the parking position. And after they sent coordinates to artillery squads, the Ukrainians made like HIMARS strike or maybe artillery strike, and as a result of that strike, the parking place was damaged. On this video, we don't see that Ukrainians managed to destroy the entire TOS flamethrower system because we don't see fire. Maybe this is just the smoke and just the sand as a result of strike. So we can't say that that system was destroyed as a result of that strike. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes during the previous 24 hours in the South Donetsk direction, the Ukrainians lost 165 soldiers, 2 armored vehicles, and 3 artillery systems. The level of losses also is very heavy in comparison with the previous days. So those were the most important and the most powerful offensives that the Russians launched all over the combat line. South Donetsk direction, Novomikhailivka, Avdiivka area, then we have Novoyegorovka area on Liman direction, and Kislovka-Kotlerovka on Kupets direction. At some places, at some front lines, the Russians managed to get some success.
Prieteni, așa arată contraofensiva ucraineană.
At some areas, the Russians were defeated, like the area of Novoyegorovka, where we saw significant number of destroyed armored vehicles and tanks. But the important thing that I was surprised with is the number of tanks that were involved in every single operation. Thousands of tanks, and this is sometimes very scary because the Russians managed to increase.
Da? Noi care credeam că a trecut moda tancurilor după ce am văzut atâția leoparzi fumegând pe câmpiile ucrainene. Numai că, ce să vezi?
The production of most modern weapon, and sometimes I had the feeling that the Russians, every single Russian soldier have his own personal tank. That was the feeling that I got when I was making this video and when I was watching all these geolocations during the day. That every single Russian soldier have a personal tank. Maybe some soldiers have 2 or 3 tanks, because I haven't seen such a big number of tanks nowhere. And when talking even about Rabotin and Verbova, the Ukrainians were defeated and they lost everything. And the final phase of offensive operation, the Ukrainians were using just infantry without any progress. And currently, the Russians have already launched a counter-offensive operation in Orekhov. For example, there was a video today, the video was very long, up to 20 minutes, of Russian counter-offensive operation on the southern part of Rabotina Salient. The Russians were attacking to the north, and as a result of that attack, they managed to capture these positions. And basically, they managed to cut this small salient on the south, on the fields between Rabotina and Verbova. Basically, this is a very dangerous situation, because from this position, the Russians can establish the fire control over the field between these two strategical and tactical positions in Rabotina and Verbova. So according to these small updates, I can make conclusion that the Ukrainian offensive operation in Rabotina collapsed, and the Ukrainians currently try to find the solution how to step back from this area without minimal losses in their reputation. And as I understand, it's impossible. Anyway, their reputation is ruined. Furthermore, the Ukrainians maybe...
Da? Juvaierul contraofensivei ucrainene, Robotin, este amenințat de ruși.
Try to change their focus and they continue concentration of forces.
Și Robotine, să ne înțelegem, este un sat de vreo 470 de locuitori, sau mă rog, atât avea înainte să vină războiul peste el.
Between Novodanilovka and Kopany, but the Russians control this territory as well, and today we got significant number of videos of FPV drone strikes against the Ukrainian supply cars, supply machines. Everything that were moving along these roads were destroyed under the Russian fire. Some positions were destroyed with artillery systems. So complete fire control. Another opinion, another thought, that maybe currently we see the usage of North Korean 150 millimeter rounds. I don't know, but now I see that everything is so massive from the Russian side. Tanks, massive. Missiles, massive. Drones, massive number. Artillery round, massive number. Soldiers, massive number.
Vorba lui Stalin. Și cantitatea este o calitate în sine.
Don't know how long the Ukrainians are able to stand against such a pressure without any supply and support from the Western countries, because currently the Western countries change their focus, and every single bullet, every single rocket, every single missile goes to Israel. And the Ukraine...
Nu știu de ce ar avea atâta nevoie israelienii de tot arsenalul ăsta ca să se lupte cu luptătorii în șlapi.
Ukrainians are getting nothing. So we'll see what is going to be next. When talking about Kherson direction, the Russians reported that as a result of artillery bombings and clashes, the Ukrainians lost another 50 soldiers. And mainly the main losses the Ukrainians has as a result of strikes using the FA-500, FA-1500 and missile strikes. On this video, we see how the Russians managed to discover in the central part of Nikopol the Ukrainian ammo depot, and as a result of FA-500 strike, the entire ammo depot was destroyed.
Deci, nici la Kherson n-a fost liniște. Prieteni, mulțumesc pentru că ați urmărit acest videoclip până la capăt. Căutați pe YouTube Military Summary, da? Găsiți canalul, abonați-vă acolo, videoclipuri interesante, așa, și vă aștept și la acest videoclip cu un like, cu un comentariu și mulțumiri celor care mă susțin pe Patreon și ca membri ai canalului Noaptea Minții. Haide, pa, pa!